She just wanted to get through her shift. One night, another table to wait on. But a single small interaction became something she could have never envisioned. A friendly smile was warped into distrust, a humane act interpreted as a threat. And in that instant, the walls around her shut tight. What ensued was not merely humiliation. It was a vicious reminder of the depth at which prejudice can slash. The question is, how far will it go before someone finally says enough? For most days, life was easy for Maya. Work, home, a little quiet time in between. That was the beat. Friends knew them as kind, dependable, the kind of person who never caused trouble. They got along, lived quietly, and asked for little. But beneath that calm, the world didn't always see them the same way. Small stares, whispered comments, the kind of things you learn to ignore. Still, nothing prepared them for what came next. Because on this day, silence would turn into something impossible to ignore. Initially, it was only a change like any other. Maya danced from table to table, plates in hand, smiling graciously, doing what they always did, attempting to remain unseen. Invisibility wasn't an option that night, though. A clique sat in one corner, their giggles shrill, breaking through the buzz of the restaurant. It was the jokes at first, not for her ears. Whispers that seemed to be bearing her name even when they didn't. She warned herself to tune it out. She had done this before. But then she saw the look. That gaze. The kind which doesn't observe a person. Just a color. Just a stereotype. Hey, one of them shouted. You sure this joint hires people like you? The words weren't shouted, but they traveled. The table beside them fell silent. Each step she took towards them weighed more, as if wading through deep water. She wanted to be invisible, to pretend that she hadn't heard. But she couldn't. Not this time. She attempted to reply calmly, her voice unshakable although her hands were shaking. Yes, sir. Can I take your order? They laughed. A hollow, cruel sound. Order? Yeah. How about you bring us someone who actually belongs here? The atmosphere changed. A manager looked over, his brow furrowed, but did nothing. The rest of the staff ignored her. And in that silence, she felt something snap. The message was blunt. She was on her own. Her breast constricted, her breathing shallow. Each moment stretched out. Should she react? Should she leave? She thought of her family, of requiring this job. But another notion entered into her mind. If she remained quiet, weren't they prevailing? She ordered for them, her fingers rigid, her smile dying away. But the embarrassment did not cease. Every time she went by their table, there was another remark, another burst of laughter, another reminder that to them, she was lesser. And then came the moment that she could never forget. One of them crept forward, his voice coming low but cutting through the din. You'll never be more than this. Serving people like us. That's all you are. The words hit with the force of punch. For a moment, she was frozen. Couldn't breathe. The room whirled, but no one intervened. Not the manager. Not the colleagues. Not the other diners gazing down at their plates. It wasn't only the slur. It was the silence that came after. The silence that testified, this is normal. This is acceptable. And standing there, a tray in her hands but no drinks, she felt something horrifying. This wasn't just tonight. This was all the nights she had swallowed her pride. All the moments she had said to herself to hold on. Endurance only took so much, though. And in that moment, she knew something needed to change. The question was, how far was it going before the breaking point? The laughter cut closer, louder, until it was no longer sound. It was a tool. Maya remained motionless, the tray clutched in her hand. Every head in the restaurant turned on her. She felt the flush build in her chest, the sting of embarrassment melting into something harder, anger. One of the men sat back in his chair, smirking. Go on, say something. Prove us wrong. His voice rang out across the room, challenging her to speak. Her throat constricted. 1,000 words longed to erupt. Years of unsaid insults. Years of being advised to let it go. But before she could utter a word, he stood and moved into her space. The room became smaller, the silence oppressive. Look at you, he scoffed, acting like you fit in here. You don't. For one heartbeat, the world stood still. She listened to the sound of her heartbeat, louder than the hum of chatter, louder than the clinking of glasses. Her knees shook, but she stood firm. She didn't flee. She didn't lower her head. Instead, she locked gazes with him briefly. And in that look, something changed. The sneer on his face wavered. The control he believed he possessed wasn't absolute. Not anymore. Then there was the push. Abrupt. Forceful. The tray crashed to the floor, ringing out across the restaurant like a shot. Gasp filled the air, phones raised, a manager finally hurrying forward. Her hands trembled, her breathing shallow, but she remained upright. The room was no longer merely observing. Now they were seeing, and in that moment she understood. This wasn't just about her. This moment would decide, not only her, but all who had ever been quieted in the same manner. The question was no longer whether she would shatter the silence, but how. By the time the manager intervened, the harm had already been done. The words, the push, the silence in the room, all had made their impression. Maya worked out the rest of her shift, but not the way she had begun it. Something within her had changed. The fear remained, yes. The shame still burned. But there was also a spark, a refusal to cower in the corner of another person's bias again. Walking home that evening, the streets were the same, but nothing was familiar. Each step bore the burden of what had occurred. And within the burden, yet a sense of clarity. This wasn't about one restaurant, one table, or one remark. It was about a system that allows racism to breathe, unspoken, unchecked, until it is normal. The truth is, her tale isn't hers alone. It's shared by every employee overpassed by their supervisor when the bullying began, by every pupil gazed at because of the color of their skin, by every individual coerced into demonstrating they belong where they have the right to belong. And here's the hardest part. We've heard stories like this before. We'll hear them again tomorrow. The question is, how many more before something changes? Because silence is what allows racism to survive. Indifference is what gives it room to grow. And stories like this, they're not just reminders of pain, they're calls to action. So the next time you witness it, the next time you hear the callous laugh, the mocking word, the push by and by, ask yourself, will I remain silent or will I stand up? The choice is ours. The effect is real, and history is watching.